Good evening, brothers. Welcome to the third edition or the third event of the Ramblings of a Traveling Man. This evening, we will have three presentations. We will have a presentation on the history of the George Washington National Masonic Memorial by past Grand Master Mike Brumback. We will then have a video by worshipful brother Tyler Whitaker, who recently presented at the Dwight L. Smith Lodge of Research. And we will close with a presentation from our senior Grand Deacon, John Bridegroom, on the Porter Lodge apron from George Washington. So before we begin, Brother Bridegroom, would you lead us in prayer?
Absolutely. If we will assume a reverent attitude. Grand Architect of the material and techno universe, we ask that you permeate this digital space which we now occupy, be with us and connect us, and grant us wisdom to teach and humility to learn. All this we ask in your holy and binary name. Amen.
So mote be. All right. Brothers, I do want to make a mention. Most worshipful brother Richard Lentz is on the call. Unfortunately, the Grand Master's internet is extremely slow this evening, so he will most likely not be talking. But he did want to send his regards to everybody who's taken the time this evening to join us for a very special occasion. So he is on the call. He can hear us. Unfortunately, I think if he started talking, we would hear nothing. But if you remember Max Headroom, if you're that old, that's what you'll hear. So what I'm going to do is our Grand Master has recorded a short message that he wanted everybody to hear. So I am going to start that and share my screen, and I'm going to start the festivities. And if I can figure out how to make this work, will be great.
Evening, brothers. I'm joining you from Leo Lodge number 224 here in Leo, Indiana. Taking a moment of reflection and inspiration. Brothers, as we head into the new year, we should all take a moment to reflect on the past, consider where we are today, and look towards the future. There are special places in this world where we can reflect on all three of those ideas. One of those places is the George Washington Masonic National Memorial in Alexandria, Virginia. This year, we're celebrating the 100-year anniversary of the Cornerstone land. Involved in creating a new cornerstone for the 100-year Cornerstone ceremony this February 2023. Over the last 100 years, Indiana Freemasons have supported the memorial through financial contributions, and some have donated their most precious asset, their time. In recent years, two of our past Grand Masters have served on the board of directors of the George Washington Masonic National Memorial. Past Grand Master Michael Brumback served on the board of directors from 1994 until 2009, and also was president of the board of directors from 2006 through 2009. You will be hearing from him shortly. Past Grand Master and Grand Secretary Richard J. Ullman has served on the board of directors from 2015 to present day. These brothers have followed in the footsteps of others that have provided leadership that makes this memorial one that all Freemasons should be proud of. In addition, you will hear a story from a third generation Freemason, Tyler Whitaker, and how his family is involved with the new Cornerstone ceremony using limestone from Indiana, sharing how operative masonry is connected to speculative masonry. Indiana Freemasonry has been a proud supporter of the George Washington Masonic National Memorial in the past, the present, and we will continue to be a strong presence well into the future. As you look upon the George Washington Masonic National Memorial, you take in the beauty and strength of the structure. To me, it represents the visions and the legacies of our brothers, and just how the principles and tenets of Freemasonry have united and guided mankind for centuries. As you enter the memorial, you see hallways lined with pictures of Grand Lodges from many jurisdictions within the United States, and from whom, together with the members of this great fraternity, erected a building of stupendous magnitude that has lasted into the current day and will endure far into the future. You progress through the many rooms and chambers in the monument, each revealing the importance of our brother George Washington to our American experiment. We learn from this monument how his life was shaped by the teachings and influences of Freemasonry and by the brothers that he surrounded himself with. Those plans continue to influence the world today. Every builder must have a plan, and thanks to the designs our brethren laid down upon their trestle board, the memorial is celebrating its 100th year anniversary. The fact that this memorial is an enduring symbol to our Masonic principles and to our great fraternity is a credit not only to the vision of our past brethren, but also the steadfast faith in our principles of our fraternity and to the perseverance of Freemasons over the last 100 years. The seed was planted, and from it blossomed a memorial to a man who held many high ranks and titles throughout his life. The brothers from Indiana have been a major supporter of the memorial from its original vision and throughout the last 100 years, and will be for centuries to come. It is my steadfast hope that you are planting your own seeds throughout life, with the faith that they will also spring forth into realized dreams that will benefit Freemasons, whosoever display them. If we succeeded in our designs in our time, Freemasonry today will continue to be recognized as the driving force for positive change in the lives of men, and will have helped to return civility to the world at large. I truly hope that you are witnessing that outcome today. Freemasonry has touched the lives of men for centuries and has helped to shape the world that we live in. Freemasonry has helped to shape my life. May Freemasonry and its many lessons continue to shape your life. May the world be a better place through brotherly love, relief, and truth. And may our fraternity continue in its centuries-old great and good work. Brothers, I thank you for joining this presentation of the Ramblings of the Traveling Man. Until we meet again, be well, be safe, be proud to be a Freemason.
All right. I'd like to say thank you to the Grand Master for recording that this evening. Our next presentation, moving along, is past Grand Master Michael Brumback. And Mike, you will need to unmute. You should have the ability to unmute yourself.
I do.
There we go.
I'm there.
All right. I will share the screen here so that everybody can see Mike's presentation. Give me 1 second.
Oh.
Sorry about this. I'm usually faster at this.
Ta-da. I think you're successful, Dave.
I sure hope so.
Are we ready?
Yes, sir.
Well, good evening, brethren. And I'm in sunny Arizona, wishing you having better weather. So tonight I'm going to give you a little history of the George Washington Masonic National Memorial. I'm going to try to tell you about 113 years of history in about 7 minutes. And then I'll give you a little tour of the memorial. So the memorial, as you know, is in Alexandria, Virginia. It was the Memorial Association was founded in 1910. And Dave, if you would advance to the next slide. In 1910, when we were formed, it was formed by Alexandria Washington Lodge number 22. That lodge was chartered by the Grand Lodge of Virginia with George Washington as their charter worshipful master. So they're very proud of their association with Brother Washington. They have many Masonic artifacts and personal belongings to George Washington and his family. But in 1881, the lodge suffered a second fire and lost many artifacts. Fortunately, they salvaged most of the important ones. But from that date, they really desired to build a new lodge hall that would be fireproof. So in 1909, Charles Callahan, who was then their senior warden and went on to become Grand Master of Virginia and president of the Memorial Association, bought several lots on the top of Shooter's Hill and donated them the lodge. And the purpose was to build a fireproof lodge hall on that land and dedicate the remainder of about 20 acres to a memorial park honoring George Washington. Next, please. Nothing much happened in 1909, but in 1910, they formed the association, as you saw the date on the crest. And then in 1911, they summoned all the Grand Masters of the United States to assemble in Alexandria to discuss forming a national association. And in fact, 26 Grand Lodges attended that meeting in 1911. Indiana was not one of them. However, getting the proceedings, they were quite impressed. But nothing happened. A meeting did not occur in 1912. The lodge was still very interested and in fact had bought some more property and acquired an additional 27 acres from Alexandria, the city of Alexandria, with the stipulation they would have to do something with the site, building a memorial within 10 years. So in 1913, and if you'd advance a slide. Next slide, please. In 1913, Elmer Gay, our Grand Master, sent a letter to all the Grand Masters of the United States and invited them to Indianapolis. Now, he wanted to show off his new Grand Lodge building across the street from the Scottish Rite, which was not built at that time. But he, in his invitation, said he wanted Grand Masters to attend and he was going to show them a good time in Indianapolis. But we would like to further continue the discussions about building a memorial to Washington and such other matters that might be of mutual interest to Grand Masters. This became the first conference of Grand Masters. So Indiana can take pride that we essentially kicked off the start of the annual meeting of Grand Masters of North America and kind of gave the jump start that the Memorial Association needed to move this forward. Next slide, please. In 1913, the memorial hired an architect to design a memorial. And he came up with the concept of using as an inspiration the lighthouse, one of the 7 wonders of the world, the lighthouse at Alexandria, Egypt. And he thought the connection with the name, of course, being in Alexandria, Virginia, the fact that this was the repository of most of the ancient world knowledge at that time. They had a fantastic library, and it was truly one of the wonders of the world, would be a great inspiration. Click next. And from that, David, click the slide one more time.
Sorry, give me
take your pointer and click on the slide itself, on the picture.
Yeah, I am doing so, and I'm
Well,
not.
if the technology worked, and it's not, if the technology worked, this would transform itself into the George Washington Masonic Memorial as we know it today. But you can see from this picture, the representation of the image is similar. This lighthouse had a light on top that was said to be so bright that it would set afire the sails of marauding ships coming. So it was, that's probably fable, but it was a great legend. Next, please. In 1923, so between 1913 and 1923, we hired an architect to design the grounds, and they hired the Olmsted architecture firm who designed the Capitol lawn and Central Park in New York City. They terraced the lawn, and so the plans for the memorial are now drawn. We have done the landscaping, and 1923 comes, and we're ready to lay the cornerstone. The very cornerstone we're going to commemorate the 100th anniversary this year and rededicate the laying of that cornerstone. In 1923, President Calvin Coolidge and past president, former president, Howard Taft, then a Supreme Court justice, the head of the Supreme Court, attended that ceremony. There were over 10,000 Masons in attendance, as well as most of the Grand Masters of the United States, visiting dignitaries, marching bands, military. The Air Force flew overhead. It was really quite a ceremony. Next slide. Calvin Coolidge, as president, laying the cornerstone, used the very trowel that George Washington used to lay the cornerstone that he laid for the United States Capitol. And that trowel is owned and preserved by Alexandria Washington Lodge, and it is on display at the memorial to this day. Next, please. So here is the memorial as we know it today. So laying the cornerstone in 23, you would think that it progressed rapidly, but in fact, it took many, many years to complete because we built it as money came in. We borrowed no money, and it was all money raised by the Masonic fraternity. If you see the 6 big pillars on the front porch, I'd like to point out that in 1923, the memorial set forth a challenge that they would like to memorialize or honor 4 Grand Lodges that would contribute the money to erect those pillars, $25,000 per pillar. And Indiana was the first Grand Lodge to volunteer to do that. So those 6 pillars you see, the 4 center ones were the ones that were memorialized, Indiana being one. The records do not show which pillar specifically Indiana, Missouri, and the 2 other Grand Lodges donated. But since we were the first, and nobody's going to dispute it, I declare that the center pillar to the right is Indiana's pillar. So the next time you go there, pat the right-hand pillar as you walk through the center and say thank you to your brethren in Indiana. You see in front of the memorial, see a large square and compass that was built and erected in 1999. We claim that's the largest square and compass in the world. No one's ever refuted it, so it must be true. It's elevated at 33 degrees because the Scottish Rite made a contribution towards that, and they thought that was an important elevation number. Next slide. When we go inside in Memorial Hall, this is the purpose of the memorial. It is to memorialize George Washington, our brother and first president of the United States. And when we discuss the architect, when he designed the building, the pillars on the outside are formed from the Parthenon, and they are Doric in character. And the pillars on the inside in Memorial Hall are Corinthian, as you can see. This statue was dedicated in 1950 by Harry Truman, President of the United States, past Grand Master of Missouri, stands 17 feet tall, and it's solid bronze. Next slide, please. Now I'm going to take you on a little tour of the memorial. We've come inside, seen Memorial Hall. I'm going to take you downstairs. This is the Grand Masonic Hall. It's used primarily as a banquet hall, but dances and other functions can be held there. You see the statue of Washington in the background in one of the niches, but this is on the bottom level of the memorial. You see you see 3 of the 4 pillars on each side there, and those are directly below the 4 large pillars above them in Memorial Hall. Next slide. Here is another statue of Washington donated to us by the Scottish Rite, and behind it, the niche is Mount Vernon painted. Next slide. Even though we had exhibits from all the major Masonic organizations in the United States at the George Washington Memorial, oddly enough, we didn't have any exhibit on Freemasons specifically. So while I was president and during this period where we started making some changes to the memorial, we dedicated a new museum to Freemasonry. And there you see a mannequin of George Washington wearing the apron that he wore when he laid the cornerstone of the United States Capitol. Mark Tabbert, our curator today, is the one that oversaw this important display. Next. We're now going to move up to the level of Memorial Hall again, and just off the front entrance is an interesting replica lodge room. This is the way the lodge room looked for A.W. Lodge when they were downtown with the days they had the fire. All the furniture in this room is original furniture. The painting of Washington above the chair is an original watercolor painted by William Williams. The altar and the 3 lesser lights are all original. All the artwork on the wall is all original. So this is a great replica lodge room. Next slide. This is a close-up of the chair. This chair came out of Washington's library at Mount Vernon. It was used by the lodge as the master's chair for many years. Today, only the worshipful master of A.W. Lodge and the Grand Master of Virginia are each allowed to sit in it one time only to have their portrait taken, and it is in rather fragile shape in today, and so no one is allowed to sit in it any longer. The picture right behind it is the picture painted by William Williams, has an interesting history. It's considered to be the most accurate painting of what Washington really looked like as he was aged in his 60s as president of the United States. He is not wearing a wig. He does not have his false teeth in. You see he has a scar on his cheek where a tooth was extracted. He had an impacted molar. You see pock marks on his cheeks when he got smallpox, and you see a mole under his right ear. None of those things are ever shown in the portraits that we're used to seeing, like on the dollar bill. He told the artist he was not sitting for portraits anymore, but he agreed because the lodge asked him to, but he told the artist to paint me as I am. And the letter that came from Washington with the painting says, it is a good likeness. It does not flatter me. Next slide. Here is the actual apron that Washington wore to lay the cornerstone. It was given to him as a gift by 2 Masons, Watson and Consul, and it was designed and sewn in France. But this apron is preserved and on display at the replica lodge room. Next. This is one of my favorite pieces in the replica lodge room. In the upper left-hand corner is a pocket watch belonging to Dr. Craik. Dr. Craik was senior warden of the lodge while Washington was master. The truth is, Washington only attended lodge twice during his 18 months as master, never at a stated meeting or degree work. Dr. Craik served as master. It was an honorary position. But this was his pocket watch and believed to be on his person when he attended Washington at his death. The mantle clock on the right came out of Washington's bedroom, was given to the lodge by Martha Washington. You see down in the corner, the counterweight, it's just a rough stone. The cord holding the counterweight was cut by Dr. Craik with his scissors the minute and hour of Washington's death. It has never run since that day. You used to see clocks displayed in ads and in jewelry shop windows with the hands in this position. No one remembers why today, but it was done to memorialize Washington. Washington died at 20 minutes after 10. Next slide, please. Moving up the level, here is our theater. And we have concerts here, symphonies here, meetings here. Nicolas Cage was here in a movie, National Treasure, and the opening scene to the movie was here. This looked in that movie to be a museum or a room in a government building. But in fact, this was disclosed that his family had been involved in the killing of Abraham Lincoln, which turned out to not be true. But that was filmed right here in this room. Memorial Hall was used for another scene in that same movie. Next slide. Going up 2 more levels, we're at the George Washington Museum. This is sponsored by the Scottish Rites of the Northern and Southern Masonic jurisdictions of America. And in it, we have many, many relics of George Washington. And it is worth many hours of time spent. So at your visit to the memorial, you want to especially visit this room. Next slide. Today, we used to have exhibits on the various ancillary bodies scattered all over the building and in various levels of the tower. We have now assembled those into one room on the 4th level, and all the family of Freemasonry is there and displayed in a way so the general public can better understand how we are associated one with the other. So this is a relatively new exhibit, and I would encourage you when you visit to go see that. Next slide. Our very top level is the observation deck. This is the highest point in Washington, D.C. And from it, you have an observation point. You can see all the way to Mount Vernon to the south and west, and you can see all the way to the Capitol to the north. You can see the Pentagon. All those things are visible from our observation deck. This was taken at night, one of my favorite times to visit because the view is spectacular with all the lights. Next slide. While I was president, as I told you earlier, we decided that we would change the vision of the memorial. The vision had really been just to kind of keep the place open. And we decided it was really time to, it needed some renovations. It needs some overdue repairs, although it still looked excellent to the public. Mechanical things were starting to wear down. So we made a commitment to make a change, and they have almost completed. Matter of fact, the outside was one of the last steps, and they have just completed the retuck pointing. But we also wrote a new vision and mission statement for the memorial to inspire humanity through education to emulate and promote the virtues, character, and vision of George Washington, the man, the Mason, and father of our country. Next slide. This is a great picture when we dedicated this big square and compass you see in the foreground. We had a spectacular fireworks exhibit, but the memorial is lit with LED lights at night, but it's a beautiful sight and you can see it from all over the basin. Next slide. So we've now heard a little bit about the history. We've had a quick tour. And now it's time to play Stump the Old Grandmaster, past Grandmaster, if anyone has any questions.
Brothers, I'm going to unmute everybody. If you'd give me 1 second. Sorry, I've got to close a few items on my screen.
And we haven't got time for too many questions because I'm right up to the 20-minute mark.
Yep, I am.
I think they should be able to unmute themselves. I changed the setting.
Did you change that? Thank you.
Yep.
All right, I'm going to set a timer for about 4 minutes because we do have some other presentations. So if anybody would like to ask past Grandmaster Brumback some questions, that would be great.
Past Grandmaster Brumback,
Yes,
this is Martin Webb from West Lafayette Lodge number 724.
welcome.
I was wondering if the memorial had published any kind of pamphlet or booklet talking about the history of the memorial, the different aspects, a lot of the things that you talked about tonight, and made that available to the public.
As a matter of fact, they have them in our gift shop, but if you go on our website, there's a great historical perspective right on the George Washington Masonic website.
Can you order that book from their website?
Yes, you can. There is a gift shop and you can order. And if it's not on there, there's a phone number you can call and they'll be happy to send that to you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other questions?
With respect to the upcoming ceremonies on the 18th and 20th Grandmaster, I have contacted our lodge, our jurisdictional lodge here in Indiana, to ensure that my paperwork has arrived ahead of time. But I also wanted to check and see, I attended Alexandria Lodge 22 in 1992 and part of 1993 because I was on a detail for the U.S. Navy in the area at that time. Is there any way that I can get that verified?
That would be through AW Lodge. If you're going, I just got communication. They are having a meeting on the 18th. So anyone that's in town for the evening, the 18th, it's possible you could attend a meeting of AW Lodge.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No, going once, going twice. All right. If there are any other questions, we will have some time at the end of the presentations for any more questions if anybody thinks of anything. Moving along, we have a presentation by Worshipful Brother Tyler Whitaker. It is titled Operative Masonry in a Speculative World. This presentation was recently done and recorded at the Dwight L. Smith Lodge of Research meeting held after Founders Day. So without further ado, I am going to begin this video. The video runs about 19 minutes. And so yeah, without further ado, here's Brother Whitaker.
Good afternoon, Worshipful Master, Wardens, brother and all. My name is Tyler Whitaker. I'm a third-generation Master Mason. I was raised in Saul D. Bayless Lodge, number 359 in Fort Wayne, Indiana, on June 16th, 2014. I am a past master and proud member of Fellowship Lodge, number 681 in Anderson. I have the honor and privilege of serving the Grand Lodge as the current Tyler for Bartimaeus Lodge under dispensation and a Masonic educator for District 4. I am also a member of the Indy Valley of the Scottish Rite and Anderson York Rite and other concordant bodies. In my professional life, I am the Vice President of Worley Monuments in Muncie, Indiana. I have 20 years experience as an operative mason. I followed in my father's footsteps, whose humble beginnings in the craft started with hammer and chisel in hand, working his way up through the ranks until he purchased the business in 1996 from the Worley family. Worley Monuments was founded in the small town of Montpelier, Indiana in the year 1899, and later moved to Muncie, Indiana, where our home office is still today. Having the opportunity to be both a speculative and operative mason offers me a unique perspective and appreciation for the working tools and other symbols found in Freemasonry, but more especially for the craftsmanship of those operative workmen who not only laid their mark on the history of our fraternity, but also built stone structures of stupendous magnitude that still trace their horizons to this day. Although the art of monument crafting is a far cry from the skilled workmanship employed by the cathedral builders of the Middle Ages, the process of stone cutting to fit the desire of its artisan remains the same to this day. Since the dawn of creation, men of every country, sect, and opinion have implanted in their conscience, by the grace of the supreme architect of the universe, a desire for science, industry, and knowledge, but more especially to build. As we learn through the philosophies of our gentle craft, every master mason is a builder, not only for this life, but for all eternity, striving as best we can in our weak human way for the uplift and betterment of ourselves and our fellow man. From the rise of these early civilizations into modern times, humanity has sought to reach for the heavens, to somehow bring themselves closer to the celestial lodge above, through the erection of temples and monuments to their deity, therefore attempting to imitate the divine plan, and through a study of symmetry and order, which we know gave rise to society and birth to every useful art. Although the precise origins of Freemasonry may be lost to the sands of time, we can say with confidence that the formation of operative stonemasons guilds began long before the erection of King Solomon's Temple within the Egyptian and other ancient mystery schools, which through the ages evolved into the fraternal speculative lodges that we know today. Thus, from time immemorial, Masons have employed a variety of stones, symbols, ornamentations, and tools to not only furnish themselves with dwellings and convenient shelters from the vicissitudes and inclemencies of the seasons, but to transmit through the ages, unimpaired, the excellent tenets of our institution. The art of operative stonemasonry has changed very little since its inception, only in its practice, thanks to the advancements in science and industry. With the development of modern tooling such as carbide steel chisels, heavy equipment, and industrial diamonds. One of the 70,000 entered apprentice in the mountains and quarries at the building of King Solomon's Temple would recognize several of the tools still employed by his profession today. Through their sheer strength of will, the science of geometry, and the humble working tools available to them at the time, our ancient brethren, the operative stonemason, were able to extract from our Mother Earth rough ashlars in their rude and natural state. These stones may have varied in size from the great pyramids of Giza or Stonehenge to the precise and ornate as displayed in the flying buttresses of Notre Dame or Rosalind's Chapel. Today, stone quarries utilize a variety of modern equipment, ranging from mobile drilling rigs and heavy explosives used to blast large chunks of stone from the earth to massive bridge saws with circular diamond impregnated blades in excess of 12 feet, to diamond wire saws with cutting wires in excess of a mile long. Thanks to these industrial innovations and the aid of commercial excavation equipment like cranes, heavy-duty loaders, and semi-trucks, operative quarrymen of today are able to remove multiple 20-plus ton stones on a daily basis. A scale and rate that would have been unprecedented by the operative workmen of old, those men who were armed only with a setting maul, wedges, and chisels, who may have languished for weeks, months, and years to accomplish the same task. We as speculative Masons are reminded that these ashlars are an emblem of human life, and that through life's experiences, relationships, and education, a proper force is applied to man, a force that will continue to develop his personality and character for the years to come. So too, in operative Masonry, a proper force is applied, at times ever so delicately, to stone so that it can be utilized and manipulated for the will and needs of man. This is never more apparent than in the use of wedges, with the ability of this small tool, when a proper force is applied in just the correct way, can aid its artisan to split large stones, blocks, or boulders with nothing more than a few taps of a hammer. This also holds true for Freemasonry. When properly applied to a man's conscience, will change the course of his life forever. The Lewis pin. Speculatively, this tool can be found in the rituals of different jurisdictions of Freemasonry throughout the world. Indiana Freemasonry recognizes this emblem to recognize brethren with generational affiliation to the craft. Through the understanding of geometry and physics, with the assistance of an angular hole drilled into the stone, when the force of gravity and friction is applied during lifting, will prevent its removal. Thus, a stone could be lifted without the aid of straps or slings when those situations would deter their use. Hand stone cutting utilizes those working tools we as speculative masons know so well, particularly the 24-inch gauge, the square, and the common gavel, with the assistance of the chisel. Speculatively, the chisel can be found utilized during several of the appendant body degree work and implies very similar philosophies that are found in Blue Lodge. But operatively, it varies greatly depending on the desire of its wielder. The pitcher is a blunt-faced hardened carbide steel, flat-edged chisel used in situations that require large quantities of stone to be removed. The chipper is used during mostly finishing work between a flat surface and a rough rock edge. This radiused edge chisel ends in a sharp face, which is designed to split stone with little fracturing of the smooth surface. The tracer, the largest of the hand chisels, it is utilized in squaring corners of two rock faces, as well as sending a large shock wave through the stone, which aids in the splitting process. The point is sharpened to a diamond point on four sides. This chisel is designed to remove unsightly rock edges or high points prior to a stone being hewn. Sorry. The engraver's chisel, the smallest of the hand's chisels and is sharpened to a razor's edge, is used in lettering or intricate carving work. Stone engraving, a process previously reserved for those master workmen who, after a virtuous education, their own endeavors through years of experience and the blessings of God, would arrive at the age of manhood with the true understanding of the craft and the steady hands necessary to perform their tasks. Because unlike in other arts like painting, where a mistake is easily erased by an additional layer of color, stone cutting relies only on that which is removed and is not easily erased. Thus, this was the chosen medium to preserve the records of those ancient civilizations and still utilized to this day to memorialize our loved ones. The cornerstone is an emblem of our steadfast dedication and devotion to the foundation of ourselves and to our fraternity. Freemasonry utilizes this emblem not only to admonish the young entered apprentice of the importance of the step he has just taken, but to remind him of his duty to his God, his neighbor, and himself. Through an understanding and his choice to implement our philosophies into his daily life, he will be the better enabled to uphold those morals and principles which lay the foundation upon which he can build his own spiritual temple and thus a righteous life. Freemasonry also employs the use of physical cornerstones on countless public ceremonies on a federal and state local level every year. This long honored tradition holds true to today. And February 20th, Freemasons from all over the nation will assemble in Alexandria, Virginia, to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the conception of the George Washington National Masonic Memorial. And in doing so, will honor and pay tribute to one of the greatest men in modern Freemasonry, as well as to one of the founders of our great country, the United States of America. Thanks to the gracious confidence of past Grand Master Michael Brumback, Worley Monuments has been given this exceptional honor and once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to represent all of Indiana Freemasonry in producing the new cornerstone for this celebration. To share this upcoming occasion with a business partner, a brother, and a mentor, but more especially a father, is an experience words cannot begin to describe, and one that I will hold dear for the rest of my life. One may think that the true art of operative masonry has been lost to the sands of time, with concrete, glass, and steel structures now overtaking our skylines, but bound together by our fundamental values of brotherly love, relief, and truth. Speculative Freemasonry seeks to carry on the legacy established by those ancient brethren. By doing so, it continues on a daily basis to aid those men who seek its light and thus become better versions of themselves for the benefit of humanity. First off, before I relinquish the floor, I would like to thank Worshipful Brother Dave Hoffler for the invitation, and Worshipful Brother Barry White for allowing me to speak. To be in this room with you gentlemen is an honor that I would have never expected, and I'm grateful for.
All right. That concludes Worshipful Brother Tyler Whitaker's talk. Do we have any questions? If you do have any questions, you can unmute yourself. Amber? We have a question. It looks like I do not have a mic. Okay, well, we will move on as we are coming close on time, and we will do Tyler, a brother named John wants to know what type of stone was being worked.
That was Indiana limestone, as well as the new celebratory cornerstone is also Indiana limestone. So,
All right. Any other questions before we move on to Worshipful Brother John Bridegroom's presentation?
Being from Bedford, Indiana, and Bedford limestone being used in most of the buildings in the area there. Brother Tyler, was that by any chance Bedford limestone, or did you get that in northern Indiana?
That was in fact Bedford limestone. The quarry is a 3D stone actually there in town.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it.
No, you're welcome, sir. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? I think we've covered every question that's in the chat. So if there are no further questions, I will relinquish the floor to Worshipful Brother John Bridegroom.
All right, I appreciate that, Dave. I do have a PowerPoint that I'm going to share here. So I'm going to share my screen. And here. Okay, now it looks like you guys can see the full PowerPoint. I want to, before I get started, actually, knowing that this is being recorded for posterity's sake, early on in the presentation, there was a gentleman on named Harold Louderback, and Harold was an old dear friend of mine. He was secretary of Porter Lodge 137 the entire time that I was in the officer line, and while I was worshipful master. It looked like he had to drop off before we got to this presentation, but I just wanted to kind of give a little shout out to Harold. I haven't seen him in probably 10 years or longer, but it was wonderful to see his name pop up on the presentation, and maybe he'll watch this video later and have an opportunity to hear me say hello. So, brethren, tonight we have had some wonderful information shared with us about the George Washington Masonic Memorial in Alexandria, Virginia. It is, in fact, a very spectacular building and singular in its veneration of George Washington and his Masonic character, claiming its place on the skyline just outside of our nation's capital. It is a fitting addition to this great country, in my opinion. And for the man who was once offered to be King of the New World and was also offered to be Grand Master over the whole of America, and who in his infinite wisdom turned both of those down. It is a living homage both inside and out. His imposing figure looms large inside the building as well, in full Masonic regalia. However, though, perhaps you don't need to travel all the way to George Washington Masonic Memorial in Alexandria, Virginia, to get a taste of George Washington's Masonic history. Tucked away in Valparaiso, Indiana, at Porter Lodge 137, is a unique piece of Masonic history that just may do the trick. On January 7th, 2014, Porter Lodge 137 assembled for its first stated meeting, led by Worshipful Master James A. Iles II. Not its first stated meeting, its first stated meeting under James Iles. After the usual business, Worshipful Master Iles introduced some very special guests who wished to make a presentation to the lodge. On behalf of the Steindler family, Conrad Steindler, Tom Steindler, and Gary Steindler carried with them a beautifully hand-painted silk Masonic apron. Aside from being a remarkable piece of Masonic history, wonderfully preserved, it also was said to have been worn by George Washington. The apron is currently on loan to Porter Lodge 137 to display in their Masonic Hall, and was accompanied by some documentation that reveals some of its unique history. One piece of documentation gives a short history, stating that Mr. James Agins was in possession of the apron, and it was undoubtedly worn by George Washington. It was said to have been owned by a Mr. Louis W. Hamilton, who received it from a Mr. Cunningham of Georgetown, D.C. in 1862. Mr. Cunningham, it states, was the oldest living Mason in Virginia at the time of his death, at 92 years of age. It goes on to say that the apron was exhibited in various lodges around the country and always excited great interest. Also accompanying the apron was a lodge pamphlet from King David's Lodge number 68 of Baltimore, Maryland, showing where the apron had been displayed for the brethren there in 1955. In addition, there is a receipt from the Grand Lodge of Maryland acknowledging that the apron was then given to the Masonic Museum there and stated that it was worn at one time by George Washington. Now, Porter Lodge 137 is grateful to the Steinler family, who has so graciously allowed this wonderful piece of Masonic history to be housed within our lodge. It is truly a Masonic relic to be treasured, and the brethren of Porter Lodge have created a wonderful display in the corner of their lodge room to showcase it. Complete with a print of the only portrait that Brother Washington ever sat for, a bust of Brother Washington with collar and jewel, a small writing table with quill pen, and a replica of the Masonic Bible that he was sworn in on as president, and a framed copy of the Declaration of Independence. The apron is not without speculation, however. While informally consulting Brother Mark Tabbert of the George Washington Masonic Memorial, he expressed doubts that Washington could have worn the apron. Masonic aprons can often be dated by their design upon them, as well as the shape and size. While this apron is perhaps a close contemporary, the design seems to be of one of a later date, after Washington's death. It is possible that the apron was claimed to be worn by Washington shortly after his death and displayed around the country as such. It was not uncommon for that sort of thing to happen in that era and revolving around such a renowned figure. However, even if that were true, it does not take away from the beauty and history that this unique apron carries with it purely from a Masonic standpoint. And as was once said, never let the truth get in the way of a good story. The opportunity to bring such an item to a local lodge is rare, and Worshipful Master James Iles II and his corps of officers have accomplished something truly special for Porter Lodge 137 with the generosity of the Steinler family. By adding to our legacy this unique and inspiring piece of Masonic lore to its halls, if you are in Northwest Indiana, near the city of Valparaiso, please come see this historical apron for yourself. Thank you. There you go.
Are there any questions at this time for Brother John Bridegroom? If anybody does have any questions about any presentations throughout the night.
Looks like Richard Smith has a question.
Richard, you are muted, sir. Let me see if I can help you there. There you go.
How about that?
There we go.
All right. Brother Bridegroom, in your presentation about George Washington's apron, and it had been discovered the design shows it to be of a later date. Has the original ever been documented or found?
Well, this apron in particular is unique because the story that goes along with it was just that Washington happened to show up to a meeting at a lodge where they handed him this apron to wear. So it was sort of incidental. He supposedly wore it one night and then off he went. And then, of course, then they kept it. And then after his death, they showed it around. You know, we have the documentation, obviously, that you saw that kind of shows that it was shortly after his death, was immediately starting to be shown around as something that he wore. But again, Mark Tabbert had his doubts based off of, you know, generally when they were painting aprons back then, they were using source material that could be dated. And so as the designs on the aprons change, you can date them by the other source material that's out there. But that's hasn't been an official sort of investigation on the apron itself. We prefer to like the story that it was possibly worn by Washington. There hasn't been, I mean, I think he had his own aprons, which one of them was on display at the memorial, as Michael showed in his presentation. But this one was sort of a unique, wasn't one that was owned by him, was supposedly just one that he wore while he was at a meeting. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Does anybody else have any questions on any of the presentations throughout the night? Don't be shy. All right.
Dave, I can say that I will take the recording of this and cut it down to the main part as soon as we get off. And I am working on an email to the craft that has links to the 3 that we've done thus far. So for those of you that are asking for that, hopefully you will have that in your inbox before 10:30 this evening.
Cool.
Thank you, brother. Can we get our name added to that list to ask for the 3 links?
We should, if you're getting emails from Andy or marketing at indianagrandlodge.org, you should be getting that. Michael, if you don't, reach out to whatever email got you here and I'll get it back to you.
Okay,
If
thank
you're
you.
here, I assume you've gotten an email from me or something. So
Yep, thank you.
All right. Well, I definitely want to thank all of our presenters, Most Worshipful Brother Michael Brumback, Worshipful Brother Tyler Whitaker, and Worshipful Brother John Bridegroom. I think this was a fantastic event with a lot of really good Masonic education this evening. I know I learned a lot about the George Washington Masonic Memorial this evening, indeed. So thank you.
It's very exciting what how much Indiana has had a role in what has happened out at the George Washington Masonic Memorial. It's very exciting that Tyler has the opportunity to work on the Cornerstone for this 100-year celebration. I know several of the Grand Lodge officers are going to be out there for the festivities and parading in the parade and that sort of thing. So it does make me pretty proud to be an Indiana Freemason when something like this is happening in the nation's capital and we have kind of a center stage. So it's very cool. Very cool.
That is true. Tyler, is there anything you want to say about or expand upon on your involvement with creating that Cornerstone? You want to give any more detail on that? Or
Well, the new celebratory Cornerstone is a half scale of the original. And still at a half scale, it's in excess of 1,400 pounds. Michael Brumback, George Savers, and myself actually this past week have finalized the design, and carving began this week. Looking forward. I wish I could share pictures with everybody where we're at now, but I think we'll wait until after the official unveiling on the 20th. But it's been an honor to participate on something of this scale and an opportunity that I never would have imagined. So thank you again, Michael.
all right. Well, I think we are 9 minutes past our cutoff time, but I think it was well worth it. Again, I really want to thank Most Worshipful Brother Michael Brumback and brothers Tyler Whitaker and John Bridegroom for presenting this evening. I also want to thank Most Worshipful Grandmaster Richard Lentz. I know he's still listening, for allowing us to have this. The next Ramblings of the Traveling Man event looks to be April 27th. And the one after that will be July 27th. Those are the dates that I have in front of me right now. I know that Andy Stevens will be sending out more information as we get closer to those dates. And I know I see our Deputy Grandmaster Gary Brinley is on here, as well as our Junior Grand Warden Randy Seipel is on here too. So
I think Steve Bates is also on here. And
Steve?
yeah.
All right, so this was a very well attended event, brothers. I thank you all for being with us this evening. And I know a lot of you have asked for the videos. We will have those available as soon as we can. So thank you all.
All right.
Thank you for letting me visit from Arizona. Good evening,
Absolutely.
brother.
It's great to see you.
Good to see you, Mike.
Thanks all. Everyone have a great night.